Hi, everyone. I'm Natalie Gawkner. This is Both Sides of the Aisle, and I represent the political center and have on the political left, Shireen Ghorbani.
Hello, and hey, listeners. Special shout out to, I believe your name was Julie. We met at the grocery store this week. We so appreciate people tuning in.
Love our listeners. And on the political right, Representative Ryan Wilcox.
Hi, good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, great to see you, Ryan. We're in studio, and let's go through several issues, both national, international, and start with President Biden, Shireen, saying it was a good day for world peace when he signed the $95 billion military spending package for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. That was a long time in coming.
Long time coming. Many delays on this for a variety of reasons. But I actually heard a pretty interesting interview with Mitch McConnell, who said really the problem was in our house, right? With Republicans getting people on board for this. But ultimately, I think through kind of old-fashioned diplomacy in the sense of really working with people, trying to share information, good information, which we don't always have. I think it's an interesting framing around considering this a good day for peace. This is a good day for war, right? Mm-hmm. When we're talking about the kind of money that we're investing in military, I wish that we wouldn't conflate these issues in the way that we do. I think that we can move towards greater global stabilization with these kinds of investments, but the way that we go about them is continually reinvesting in the military-industrial complex. That's what we do as a nation.
Ryan, this is peace through strength in the Reagan terminology.
Is it though?
Yeah.
I don't know. What are we at now? 600 billion in the last year or two? Where does that end? You know, one of the last things that I heard this week was that Ukraine is negotiating a deal with the administration right now so that there's ongoing funding through the next administration that's required, regardless of who happens to be president.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What does that even mean? Like,
yeah.
We're not. It's bad enough we don't even vote to go to war anymore. I don't know how much of the Constitution are we going to ignore?
Yeah. Ryan, how about those chilling numbers that the estimates are that in this war, Israel has now killed over 34,000 people in Gaza. It's been 6 months. 14,000 of that 34 are children.
And the stats on starvation are also horrific. It's heartbreaking.
I mean, it's...
there's no happy side to war. There's just not until it's over.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, I'm with you. Shireen, I guess now we're ready for this next move where Israel plans to do a ground invasion of Rafah. The U.S. publicly opposes that. Buckle up, huh?
Yeah, so I think we're heading into a greater time of, death and destruction, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it does seem to me that there is a bit of a changing tide when we think about the way, and I'm sure we'll get to it, but the way that people are bringing attention to this issue across our nation, when we think about even the protests that are happening inside of Israel, really saying, what is the end game here? Mm-hmm. They want the hostages back. They want their family members back, very reasonably so, right? But it doesn't seem like Netanyahu has a plan here other than to just continue to ravage war on a nation that is, well, not a nation, on a group of people that have no way to really defend themselves.
Yeah. Ryan, I've shared this story with Shireen before, but when I worked in the Levitt administration, once had a meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu, Bibi, as they call him. He was not in office at the time, and it was pre-Olympics. It was during the Olympic torch relay, and we would go to cities and have Utah receptions, and he was there, and so Governor Levitt met with him. But I remember him saying to Governor Levitt, of course, this was in the 9/11, terrorist time, but I remember him saying to Mike Levitt, America loves a glorious war. And I looked at him like, wow, this guy's war-minded. Yeah. And it just sort of has played out for me as I've watched this.
We were talking a little bit earlier about, why people do the things they do.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't imagine what it would be like to live in a place like Israel, where your enemies are openly threatening you on a regular basis.
It's got to put you close,
like right there.
Yeah.
Right. And, even I think one of the hardest things for me to stomach with all of this, this is that total disaster. One of the hardest things for me to stomach with all of this is our sort of duplicity as foreign policy, where we are literally funding both sides.
Mm-hmm.
We gave money to Iran. They launched missiles at Israel. And then we send signals whether or not, how hard they can hit back.
Mm-hmm.
And then we fund the Palestinians. And then we fund the Israelis. and back and forth. And what is this other than just massive scale deception, pretending like we don't see because people aren't paying attention?
Well, I would actually argue that what it is a country disinterested in true peace, right? If we actually thought about flipping the ideological framework around global domination, we might get different results, but we don't, right? So we kind of keep playing into the same patterns of behavior with often the same and frankly devastating results.
Yeah.
Yes, we went from the Abraham Accords, moving the embassy, all of that kind of stuff, to verge of World War III if it hasn't already started.
You don't, but you don't think some of those things directly contributed to increasing hostilities in that region? I mean, what did you think the Abraham Accords accomplished?
At the time?
At all.
I love them because they created more modernity and connection between the Arab world and the rest of the world. And I visited Dubai and UAE and saw how that connection with Tel Aviv was so healthy in my mind because now they have direct flights and they're integrated rather than separated. So I'm a big fan of the Abraham Accords, what I know of them.
I think if we just stayed on that path instead of the path that we've gone down since then, I think we're in a dramatically different place.
Okay, but I mean, we're not the ones who changed direction. The change in direction came from Israel.
Absolutely not.
Well, it came from Hamas.
Middle East, absolutely not, especially towards Iran. Like, we sent the exact opposite message.
It is Iran, but okay, continue.
Okay.
I'm Iranian, so it matters to me.
Hey, but take us, it's graduation week. Shireen, take us to college campuses. I'm heartbroken for these students at USC that don't get their graduation, their commencement ceremonies. My son was a COVID graduate, University of Utah, and he's now reminding me that he has no idea what a graduation ceremony looks like. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he missed this.
Same class.
Okay, yeah, he missed
that in high
he missed
school.
this, and so I'm sort of like, this is a loss. I mean, there's a way to have foreign policy that you disagree with without forcing these institutions to, for safety reasons, to close their ceremonies.
Yeah, I've been very interested in the discourse and reporting on this, in part because it seems like university campuses used to be a place of great political action and discontent and pushing boundaries. And it does seem wholly like we've forgotten how to do that. And then the response mechanisms feel deeply out of whack, kind of.
I feel like the whole time I was at the university, there was a camp established on apartheid.
Yes, yeah.
And it was just sort of, you go learn about it, and it was like disagreeing better.
Yeah.
To quote our governor.
Yeah, you would think.
But not so today. Did you want to say anything, Ryan, about what's happening on college campuses?
It's embarrassing.
You saw what Speaker Johnson got booed at Columbia.
Okay, but I just also have to say what Speaker Johnson did was come to Columbia and say that Biden should bring in
National Guard.
And if for me, that is a person so deeply out of touch with history. First of all, the president does not call in the National Guard. The governor would do that if that's what happened. But is Speaker Johnson a person who doesn't have the lyrics "Tin Soldiers and Nixon's Coming" or the image of that woman on Kent State's campus like blazed into his mind? Like, how do you get so deeply out of touch with what actually happened when we did call the National Guard?
National Guard protest Kent State.
I can't let that one go. I can't let that one go because the National Guard is what we did when we were dealing with the civil rights issues in Alabama. We called in the National Guard to help with integration, right? So, yeah, the National Guard isn't by default this, terrible thing because of one way it was used one time. There is an appropriate use for that in higher education, right?
Yeah, but shooting unarmed protesters and creating those kinds of environments.
Nobody's talking about shooting them.
I'm into all
that's what happened to Kent State.
Personal
that actually happened.
But the exact opposite happened in Alabama. They protected the black students who were being admitted for the first time, and to the rights they should have had all along. And they kept it peaceful when there was chaos there. And I think that's more than likely, I don't know Speaker Johnson, but I'm thinking more than likely that's what was going through the guy's mind, right?
Yeah. Hey, I have
like a false dichotomy.
I keep doing all these personal anecdotes today, but my sister lived in Ohio, and I used to go back in the summers and help her with her kids while she was a student at Kent State. Oh, wow. But I would push the children around in a stroller and go to that monument. Yeah, it's blazed in my mind. Okay, the Supreme Court and their arguments about the immunity case, fascinating. I found it fascinating.
What stood out for you?
Well, it was just so fun for me to hear the rule of law being debated and these uber intelligent people going after, thinking about how do you define private acts? How do you define official acts? I'm sure our producer, Anthony Scoma, liked this because he's in law school. But I thought it was wonderful to see our system working. Now, we still don't know where it's going to end. Shireen's looking at me like, Natalie, I'm skeptical.
We'll see.
But I really liked I like seeing the law played out right in front of our eyes. Comments?
Ryan, did you follow?
Not closely enough. Some of this stuff, there's how many lawsuits and cases right now. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it makes you glad that you've got a variety of them in there, because clearly some are going to rule in a way that I don't think they should, and others are going to be, more in the middle. But it's going to be fun to see where it lands.
I'll just say it does seem like there was an initial run from the Trump camp on basically total immunity, and that has gone out the window. Yeah. So where this line gets drawn is really interesting, and I do, hope that the decisions that are made here put us in a stronger place for our democracy.
Yeah. Well, there needs to be a line, right, between private acts and official acts, and it's not clear what that is.
And we're going to get
that's
it.
Why we have the
We're going to get it. Yeah. Okay. We've got lots to talk about. It was convention weekend. So let's take a short break, and I'll be right back with Ryan Wilcox and Shireen Gurbani.
You're listening to Both Sides of the Aisle on Utah Public Radio. We love to hear from listeners like you. If you would like to send us a comment, email bsotapodcast@gmail.com. That's bsotapodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Shireen Gurbani on the left.
And Ryan Wilcox on the right.
Natalie Gochner. I'm in the political center, and I'm so glad to be with my two friends, kind of corralling them, but also leading a discussion. And I am so excited, Ryan, to ask you about the Republican state convention, which was held this weekend. 4,000 Republican delegates, Salt Palace in downtown. And boy, were they anti our sitting governor, who has some sort of approval rating that's pretty darn
70%.
high. Yeah. Cox said to them, "I love you guys." And one guy yelled back, "We don't love you." Let's hear your reaction to that.
It's weird, but almost no one is ever insulted into agreement.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I just, that isn't, you get the phrase, you get more bees with honey, with flowers, that kind of thing. It just, such a strange way to try to get somebody on your side.
Mm-hmm.
That said, I don't think that was the goal.
Yeah.
Right? The goal was, I want to yell. I want to express my displeasure, which is also fully American. We just got done talking about the protests at college campuses.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of similar yelling, protesting kind of thing. And there's very much that sentiment there at the convention on Saturday.
Yeah. Shireen, for a sitting governor with a 70-some-odd% approval rating to only get a third of the delegates at his own convention.
Which he won 4 years ago.
Okay.
He won the convention 4 years ago.
Yeah, that's right. A great point, Ryan. That says something about our times. Maybe it says something about Phil Lyman. Maybe he's an incredibly attractive candidate. I don't know.
So I want to go back to just one of the logistical conversations that we often have around how difficult it actually is to participate in this form of democratic engagement, right? So the convention, I believe, started at 8 a.m. and ended at midnight.
Crazy.
Yeah. So when you think about who can give that kind of time, and what really, if I'm not mistaken, the vote for governor did not happen until past 5 o'clock. So at this point, you'd already been there for a full working day, where when we think about the amount of time that people give. So I ended up down there because it was actually also USA Fencing's, I believe, qualifying finals for who they're sending to the Olympics. And I have a little kid who's interested in fencing, so I ended up walking around down there. And I will say it is a pretty interesting space to be in, having been to the Democratic convention many times. I've never been to the Republican convention until this year. the way that people engage in the space is different. And I do feel like there's more on the table, right? We know that Democrats have a hard time breaking through in the state.
You're in the power play role.
You're in the power play. Yeah, in the Republican Party, you are in the power play role. And so the stakes, I'm sure, feel so much higher. But the amount of, I would say, just kind of anger that I felt in just kind of casual, like overhearing casual conversations walking around was surprising to me.
Yeah.
But perhaps aligns a bit with some of the outcomes that we saw.
Okay, so I was the first state delegate in 2000. And I remember Governor Leavitt being booed that convention out at the East Center.
I was there. Yeah.
And, like, okay. 2004, when his replacement race was happening. And I remember also, and this is a Democratic convention thing that I went to, but do you remember when they returned their back to Matheson? Congressman Matheson?
Yeah, I wasn't there, but yes.
Okay, so I remember watching that one going, oh, that's dumb. Republicans wouldn't do that.
Yeah, watch that. Hey, Ryan, you seem too young to me to have been at the Leavitt one in his final one, but I'm glad we shared that. I'm glad we shared that. But I will say, he got primaried, as they say. He didn't lose. In other words, a sitting governor was amazed, that he had to go through a primary, but he still won the convention. But it's completely flopped from that. And I got a whole bunch of thoughts, but let me just throw this one out. Is it Rob Axton? Am I getting the Republican?
Rob Axon.
Axon.
A-X-S-O-N. Yeah.
Rob is a good guy. He's working really hard to do what he can with the Republican Party, but he has publicly expressed that one of his goals is to engage young people.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. I can't think of a worse way to engage young people than to have a convention system that takes your entire Saturday.
Yeah.
I can't think of a worse way to engage young people than to have a presidential preference poll.
Right.
Instead of, using technology to do what we need to do. So anyway, there's something that's just not right. Let me read a quote just because it's so, I got to give credit to Governor Cox for speaking his mind and doing it in an articulate way. But he says, maybe you're booing me because you hate that I signed the largest tax cut in Utah history. Maybe you hate that I signed constitutional carry into law. Maybe you hate that we ended CRT, DEI, and ESG. Or maybe you hate that I don't hate enough. Pretty good, Shireen.
Pretty good. I'll just say that entire list of things before that is
pretty bad.
Not things that you like.
Yeah, not great. But I do wonder that. I wonder then if the performative politics that, again, has real consequences in people's lives, these culture war issues that have taken precedence and often are some of the top priorities when we think about how quickly bills move through or what comes first on the agenda, the energy and activity around those kinds of anti-bills aren't setting with this group of voters. Yeah. So what is? That's what I want to know.
So
what
the governor's done what they wanted, and they still gets booed. Yeah.
Well, this is back to why people do what they do. This clearly is not about a principled position because Governor Cox, Speaker Wilson, together pushed all of these different things through that theoretically conservative delegates would love and do and say that they do. Problem is we haven't stuck to that as a party. And clearly there's something else that they don't like, which is, I think, why the governor went to that line at the end. And I did confirm that wasn't a written part of his speech. He most often gives speeches off the cuff. He doesn't usually have somebody write anything for him. But that's, I think, what we heard on Saturday was his visceral reaction to what he was experiencing.
So you're saying that maybe I don't hate enough. He did extemporaneously.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's what he was feeling in the moment. Yeah. And that really bothers me.
And I love that in politicians when they speak their mind. So good on him.
He's great at that. He rolls with what he's feeling at the moment. And I think it usually works. But what worries me about this is the constant use of the word hatred. Mm-hmm. Because are we really at the place where we're so contemptuous with each other that we literally believe in the worthlessness of the other?
Yeah.
That strongly that, that's where we're at. And that can't be it. That is not where I believe Utah is. We're just not. I mean, it's just not.
Hey, Shireen, so why is this happening? I told you I made a list.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've got on my list distribution of income, loss of the middle class, failure of public education, technology and its impact on our lives, pushing us towards loneliness, isolation, decline in religion, decline in families, and COVID.
Yeah.
I don't know. What's on your list? Is that a pretty good list?
That's a good list. I mean, for me, a big one at the heart of it is a media system that has also changed dramatically. When we think about the decline of local reporting, the amount of information that people receive that is really tuned into their political ideology, that just creates that kind of echo chamber and reinforces beliefs they already have. And then not being able to see that, right? Which ties back to the issue around education, I think, kind of critical thinking and in mass, as information's coming at you. So these are really critical things, I think. I also feel like we do have a real sense of kind of segregation. People who kind of think like-mindedly are living more together. We also have, I do think, then that bleeds into schools. It bleeds into broader social structures. You're not mixing as often with people who think differently.
Yeah. How did you like my list, Ryan?
It's a pretty solid list. The decline of our institutions of civil society, that's one that's weighed on me for a decade or more. And not that I even have a solution to it, but watching all of these institutions that promoted healthy societies just disappear over the last decade and be replaced by what? Cell phone? I don't even know what that looks like. So we're scrambling now in the schools. We're scrambling with things we never used to have to worry about. I spent more time in the last 2 years studying school shooters than I could have ever imagined. Why would I have to do that?
Yeah.
But I think those are all tied into. And then when you talk about, we just ran through the list, and it did sound sort of funny when you said it on Saturday, but, CRT, DEI, and ESG, all of these things, for people who, at the convention, those things are, in their minds, are just more evidence of government itself attacking their personal values, attacking the things that they believe in. And so, that should be something that they're happy about.
Not a time to be happy.
Not a time to be happy.
How about our Lieutenant Governor, Ryan, tweeting out that conventions are not a place for families, and she, took some of her extended family to see her, in her role as Lieutenant Governor, and just was horrified. And even someone like Representative Kara Birkeland in the Utah House, someone who I would think would like the convention, but she just said, nope, this didn't work for me.
Yeah.
I don't think she said that. She was super concerned about her daughter's experience.
Yeah. But
right?
Feeling like they were also harassed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to say, just like the vibes were not good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the experience is tough. And I also think that it continues to be kind of a tough place for, as you were suggesting, young people. But I don't know. The system feels broken.
So I want to be honest about how I think we got here.
Okay.
And I already talked about the 2000 convention. I know that, started some of those conversations about what became SB 54. The conventions after that,
That's
2008.
the Count My Vote bill, for everyone that made it so signatures can get you on the ballot.
So what that has done is because it's left that absent path, that you can completely ignore the convention, it's disincentivized people to participate in the caucus system, which really just leaves people who are more conservative, who not that conservatism is the
extreme.
Problem.
Yeah, radicalized,
whatever that is, right? More of the average voter has less of an incentive to participate in the caucus system, is the reality right now. And so fewer of those are going to be elected delegates. And so that itself, the existence of that other path, has also helped to radicalize the conventions.
And Ryan, the way I would see that is that the conventions aren't going to win this. There'll come a time when we won't do them anymore. That's my prediction. Smiles? I don't know.
I would just say
that could be, but I think that's a disaster.
The county conventions, I feel like will probably continue. It seems like there's good organizing and reasons to have those. These state conventions, I don't know.
Yeah. Hey, Shireen, I don't want to ignore the Democrats. And there were a lot of things coming out there. We've got Brian King as the gubernatorial candidate, Carolyn Gleich as the Senate seat, Bill Campbell, 1st Congressional District, Brian Adams, 2nd, Glenn Wright, 3rd, and Katrina Falak-Wang in the 4th.
And I'll just say, we need to get into this because some wild things are happening in in my party too.
Yeah.
Give us a hint.
So
Just
we'll
a
have
hint.
to
We got
save
1 minute on the program.
We'll have to save it for
give us
next
a hint.
time. I guess I'll just say that there, one of the most interesting pieces is that it does seem like the CD2 candidate, which I was also, it appears to be a mega extremist who got through, and they decided to move forward with a nomination because if that person then resigns, then there's an ability to put somebody else in. But the entire thing is a hot mess.
Well, the first district candidate, Bill Campbell, was a Republican, running as a Republican last 2 cycles ago.
Pretty sure John Curtis used to be a Democrat. So this happens.
Not like within a day.
Really interesting. Okay, well, that's just a sign that both sides of the aisle is going to continue to be interesting. Want to thank our listeners. Thank Shireen. Thank Ryan. Thank you, Anthony Scoma, for producing the program. That's a wrap.